On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was on its way from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it vanished from radar over conflict-torn Ukraine. There were 283 people on board, including 80 children and 15 staff members. What happened to the airplane, and did anyone on board survive? Watch the complete video to know the answers. Hello and welcome to Plane Crashes Explained, where we discuss some of the most mind-blowing reasons and facts behind the most heinous plane crashes. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss future updates. Without further ado, let's get straight into this. According to a 15-month investigation by the Dutch Safety Board, DSB, the jet crashed after being struck by a Russian-made Buk missile over eastern Ukraine. An international team of criminal investigators concluded in September 2016 that evidence suggested the Buk missile was transported in from Russian territory and fired from a field held by Russian-backed rebels. The Dutch-led Joint Investigation Team, JIT, found in May 2018 that the missile system belonged to a Russian brigade, and both Australia and the Netherlands declared that Russia was responsible for the plane's downing. Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 departed Amsterdam Airport Schiphol Gate G3 at 12:13 on Thursday, July 17, 2014, and took off at 12:31 local time. It was scheduled to arrive at Kuala Lumpur International Airport on Friday, July 18th at 6:10 local time. The initial flight plan called for MH17 to travel across Ukraine at flight level 330 before changing to flight level 350 over the Ukrainian city of Dnipropetrovsk. At 15:53 local time, Dnipropetrovsk Air Control, Dnipro Control, requested MH17 whether they could climb to flight level 350 as planned, as well as maintain separation from another flight, Singapore Airlines Flight 35, which was also at flight level 330. The crew requested that the flight continue at flight level 330, and the air traffic controller granted their request, sending the other flight to flight level 350. Due to weather circumstances, the crew requested a 20 nautical mile departure to the left, north, off course on airway L980 at 1600 local time. Dnipro Control ATC also authorized this request. The crew then requested that they be allowed to climb to flight level 340, which was denied since this flight level was not accessible. Therefore, MH17 stayed at flight level 330. Dnipro Control discovered that the flight was 3.6 nautical miles north of the center line of the authorized airspace at 1619 local time and requested MH17 to return to the track. Dnipro Control called Russian ATC Rostov-on-Don (RND Control) at 1619 local time and asked permission to move the airplane to Russian airspace. The Dutch Safety Board reported a final flight data recording at 1620 local time, west of Rospine near Rabov, going east-southeast. A Buk ground-to-air missile launched from a place east of the aircraft detonated outside the aircraft, slightly above and to the left of the cockpit, at 16:20:03 local time. The cockpit and tail parts were ripped away from the center area of the fuselage due to explosive decompression. As they dropped to the earth, all three portions dissolved. Most of the debris landed in Rabov, north of Torez in Donetsk Oblast, eastern Ukraine. It spread over a 50 square kilometer region to the southwest of Rabov. The impact of the fireball is said to have been recorded on camera. Photographs taken at the accident site revealed dispersed fragments of fuselage and engine components, corpses, and passports. Some of the debris fell near dwellings. Dozens more dead were thrown into cornfields, and others were thrown into houses. When the Malaysian airliner was shot down, 3 other commercial aircraft were in the area. Air India Flight 113, a Boeing 787 en route from Delhi to Birmingham, EVA Air Flight 88, a Boeing 777 en route from Paris to Taipei, and Singapore Airlines Flight 351, a Boeing 777 en route from Copenhagen to Singapore. According to a Ukrainian Foreign Ministry representative, the bodies discovered at the crash site would be transported to Kharkiv, 270 kilometers to the north, for identification. By the next day, 181 of the 298 bodies had been discovered. Some were seen being loaded into body bags and placed in trucks. On July 20th, armed pro-Russian separatists observed Ukrainian emergency workers loading the remains of MH17 passengers into refrigerated railway wagons for transport and identification. Pro-Russian insurgents agreed to let Dutch investigators examine the bodies on July 21st. According to Ukrainian officials, 272 bodies had been recovered by this point. On the evening of July 21st, remains were transported by train from Torres to Kharkiv, where they would be flown to the Netherlands for identification. On the same day, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak announced that the Malaysian government had reached a preliminary agreement to retrieve the remains of Malaysians killed in the crash, subject to any necessary forensic work. According to the JIT and the Ukrainian government, the missile was brought from Russia and launched from a rebel-held area of eastern Ukraine. The JIT released a photo of a large Russian-made Buk missile component discovered at the crash site in June 2016. The team used witness testimony, intercepted phone calls, photographs, and satellite imagery showing scorched land in its September 2016 report to pinpoint the launch site on high ground at Pervomaisky near Snezhin, in territory held by pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine. It claimed to have tracked the missile trailer's path from Russia to the launch site and back into Russian territory after the plane was shot down. In May 2018, Dutch investigators determined that the missile belonged to a Russian brigade, the 53rd Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade, based in Kursk. Moscow's defense ministry denied the claim, claiming none of its weapons were used to bring down MH17. However, an international team of investigators discovered that all vehicles in convoy carrying the missile were part of the Russian armed forces. The Netherlands and Australia are now convinced that Russia is responsible for the deployment of the Buk installation that was used to down MH17, Dutch Foreign Minister Stef Blok said. Russian officials and rebels backed by Russia deny any involvement, with the Russian Foreign Ministry calling the JIT investigation biased and politically motivated. The Russian company that makes Buk missiles has insisted that the device was a model no longer used by Russian forces and that it was fired from Ukrainian-controlled territory. And just 2 days before the JIT was set to release its interim findings in September 2016, Russia released radar images claiming that the missile could not have originated in rebel-held territory. The JIT findings were supported by radar experts appointed by the examining magistrate. Meanwhile, commentators pointed out that Russian officials had given conflicting accounts of what had happened since the plane was shot down. According to the DSB, a missile exploded just above and to the cockpit's left, causing the plane to disintegrate in midair. According to the report, the crash was caused by the detonation of a Russian-made 9N314M type warhead carried on the 9M38M1 missile, which was launched from eastern Ukraine using a Buk missile system. The JIT, which reported on the preliminary findings of its criminal investigation in September 2016, also discovered irrefutable evidence of the use of a Buk missile from the 9M38 series. The weapon system was identified based on the damage pattern discovered in the wreckage and shrapnel fragments. Paint traces on a number of missile fragments matched paint traces on parts of a missile recovered in the area. Investigators simulated various warhead trajectories to determine where it exploded and discovered that a 70-kilogram warhead closely matched the damage observed on the wreckage. They demonstrated that it exploded 4 meters above the tip of the aircraft's nose on the left side of the cockpit, showering the plane with warhead fragments. Hundreds of high-energy objects from the warhead penetrated the forward section of the plane, killing the 3 crew members in the cockpit instantly and causing the plane to break up in stages. The cockpit first separated, but the plane continued to fly. After a short time, the wingtips separated, the plane's rear section separated, and the tail section separated further. The plane's main body collided with the ground upside down. The plane crashed at the height of the conflict between government troops and Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. The Dutch report commissioned 3 separate investigations from Dutch, Russian, and Ukrainian bodies to look into the possible location of the missile launcher. According to the report, the missile could have been launched from a 320 square kilometer area in eastern Ukraine. According to the JIT and the Ukrainian government, the missile was brought from Russia and launched from a rebel-held area of eastern Ukraine. Plane crashes happen all the time, but some people are so unfortunate that crashes like this happen to them, and so many lives are lost just because of a mistake. Authorities should be vigilant enough to understand these things and do something about them in the first place. That's all for today. If you found this video interesting, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. Thank you for watching.